We're back. It's Monday.
It's Monday.
Monday.
Hey, we're Power and Speed, 908-751-0211. We were just, man, the show's not going to be as good as that shit we were just talking about.
No. And well,
sadly.
Which shit?
The pre-show?
Just all of it. Mike was all fired up.
Oh, yeah.
Why'd you have to do that to me right before we're
It's fun.
I had made a statement that I was not going to speak of political things anymore. And I'm trying very hard not to. And then we're 3 minutes before the show. Hey, not to change the subject, but God damn it.
Yeah.
Boom.
It was worth it.
I'll just say I hate these people. I just hate them. Hold on. I got to say one thing. Well, go ahead. Do your thing, and Tad, do your thing. Well,
I did mine already.
All right. Like us on Facebook and iTunes, and don't forget to share. And Tom already gave you the number, so I don't have to.
Did you see this Casey broad on MSNBC?
No.
Casey Hunt or something her name is?
Okay.
She's,
Is she a monster?
No, she's reasonable. She talks a little deep with her voice, but I mean, but she said that the Rand Paul story is her favorite story on MSNBC.
He got beat up.
I know. What is going on?
Come on, those people are crazy.
Holy shit.
Why, is there something new about, didn't his doctor next door just came over and kicked his ass?
Apparently. And it wasn't, and I don't know if it was over politics or it was landscape. I don't
think it was.
These people are crazy. But what started all this is we started talking about GM. we did. That's what started all this, and somehow or another it slid into the idiot that's, well, let's go down that road. So I had brought up to Tom that, and boy, the Ford guys are going to hate this because here we are teasing about running people over and everything else. Now we're going to make fun of the fact that they have 4 camshafts rolling around the top of their motor.
Well, that's really true, the running over thing.
I know. I know. I keep hearing the rumors of the mid-engine Corvette having the dual overhead cam stuff.
Yep.
And I don't know why. I know it's better. I know it can make more power per inch. I mean, look at things like GTRs and all the import things. They're awfully good.
Yep.
We're going to be on the verge of, is it going to be a Cathedral port?
Well, yeah, that's never going to happen.
That's
I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't know why I don't like it. I don't have a good reason why I don't like it, but I don't like it.
So what? You don't have to like it.
Oh, we had it on the original, the Mercury Marine motor in the Vet that didn't.
That thing was a pile of shit. Yeah. It was a disaster.
Well, they didn't want it to make more horsepower because people were going to look, oh, no, that was the single overhead cam. So that would make people feel stupid for buying that thing.
They're selling some of those things, though, those Mercury Marine deals. They sell them.
What, those huge motors at
they
SEMA?
They do a small block version of that.
I just, to me, and I guess this is, like you said, heritage, and I think the word used was iconic.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, Ford did it.
And Trollop.
Use the word trollop. Ford did it. And look, they make good power. They do.
Yep.
They don't seem to be, and this could just be a design standpoint, they don't seem to handle what, say, the LS would do if you
the abuse.
Plopped it.
Why are you being so nice?
Well, I mean,
I'm
not a Ford guy.
I know. This started out as a conversation. I saw a meme or something on the internet, and God help us because they are true. But somebody said something like, so you got your fully built. Well, every buzzword you could talk about a Ford engine, fully built, forged everything, bottom end, billet twice, and everything, and it still can't make as much power as a stock short block LS.
Well, a 250,000 mile short block.
Yeah,
basically,
whatever.
So.
And it just, and I'm not knocking Ford. Their stuff it makes power. It's good. Their heads are good, but it's just funny because it's kind of true.
Well, there are retards among us everywhere that are buying, like me, a 5.3 powered truck.
Yeah.
And putting turbos on them and injectors and fuel pumps and not much more.
And squeezing them until they blow.
And making stupid amounts of power.
Yeah.
I don't know that the Ford guys do that. Maybe they do. Well,
then we should entice a Ford guy that's done that to call us up.
Well, I think some sloppy Mac guys are taking that approach.
I did see a guy that did a Mark 8 swap in a Mustang, and he put a turbo on it. He was making 600 horsepower about.
Yeah.
650.
Whoa. Time out. A Mark 8 swap?
Yes.
What's a Mark 8 swap?
Double overhead cam, Intech, aluminum block, blah, blah, blah.
Tad's one of those people.
Mine's not swapped. Mine's factory, man.
whatever.
Original, yo.
That's not a modular?
Yeah, it's a mod. But it's
This is no. You're going down the Nasdaq path. That's where you're going.
I know. Is it a 4.6?
It's a 4.6, yes.
4-valve.
Yes.
Oh, shut the fuck up. It's a modular, you idiot. It's the same as anything else. Don't say Mark 8.
But
like it's special.
Ford went down this route.
Sorry, Ted.
And I think it.
I feel bad now that I yelled at him.
That's all right.
You yell at him and, you know.
That's all right. He's like the dog that you kick and it just keeps coming back. You don't know why.
But it is just a modular.
Yes.
Intech.
It is.
Aluminum block. Romeo?
Nope.
No, it's not a Romeo block.
No, it's Intech. It's cast by Ferrari. Well, no, the foundry that does Ferrari shit.
I couldn't let you go, right?
No.
I had to keep going. You know, you should shut my mic off when shit like that happens.
Hey, I have an idea. You just ban FUD.
No, we're not going to ban FUD.
That'll be fun.
Because he'll be the subject to some ridicule.
Why?
In a
what's
moment.
he doing?
He's already, shoot Ted in the head twice. Like,
shut up, Alan. Fucking retard.
Yeah, really.
Have another shot.
At least he's sitting at a chair in a mic with a microphone. FUD, you tart.
So this goes back to the Corvette, and it goes. I don't want to see it happen. I like the pushrod engine. I don't know why Ford did it. I guess they did it because they wanted to make more per inch, what have you. But why can't we just leave the cool stuff alone? Well, Ford did it. Oh boy, here we go. All you guys are going to hate me for this, all you Ford guys. The Ford stuff, until you got into serious aftermarket stuff, was crap. I'm sorry. Like a 351, Windsor head, and like the 302 with the factory wedge, they were crap. The heads were crap.
Power or speed in, and the block split in half.
Well, I'm not even talking about that. I mean, power potential.
Right.
And I have this argument with Ford guys everywhere because somehow or another, this is like the Cathedral port argument in another direction. It's another group of retards that goes back and forth. Once you take the cylinder head and go,
we're losing fans.
I don't care.
They're dropping like flies.
Once you take it and put an aftermarket head on something, it's no longer like what that factory motor is. You've just got the pump underneath.
Of course.
So if you go back historically, factory stuff, for the most part, with the exception, I'll give Tad credit to Chrysler guys with their Hemi stuff, although that was a little sneaky in the super stock side. We know all about that.
Yeah.
The stuff was just not as good. So Ford with the Mustang, that was a great thing, even with their crappy head. The fuel injected stuff. That really turned a lot of things around for them.
It really did.
So then they went to the modular thing, and I think they were hoping to redo that again. And it looks like it has. A lot of people mess with them, but they're
well. Listen, in fairness to Ford, the modular platform is really good, and it is really popular.
Yep.
And they make good power. They make good solid power. They sound like crap. I just had to get that in there. But they get used quite a bit. It's not even a cult following. I mean, they're in a lot of stuff and they make good power, but it's not like an LS. It's just
they're so good that Ford replaced it with a twin turbo V6 and the GT. So
well, see, that's the other thing. What are you doing? I mean, this is where the fucking wow. What is that USA thing that the guy did rubbing his ear nose?
Oh my God.
Why do you have to fuck with our stuff? I mean, V8s have been the engine. Yeah, a staple, iconic. I mean,
Mike's going to be really fired up in a couple minutes.
Oh, yeah.
I could see it coming. Because there's millennials at the wheel right now.
And you're absolutely right.
I know.
You're absolutely right. That's probably how we ended up with square Corvette taillights.
I was just going to say it. I was just going to say it.
I am that guy. The square Corvette taillights bother me.
It's terrible. It's terrible. And we were having this conversation. I know you don't know a lot about GTRs, and if you look at them, their taillights have been the same since, I believe, the beginning of GTRs. They have a big one, a little one. They're a little staggered.
Isn't the same one that he keeps on driving? Is that a GTR? No, it's just a frickin',
Maxima?
Yeah. So.
Shut up. But anyway.
They do look like a Maxima. No offense to the GTR guys, because they're pretty badass. But
no, but at least they keep that, I said iconic then. Mm-hmm. It's that look.
Yes.
And some guy, I don't even want to say his name was probably Marshall or something, Austin, right? And no offense to any of the Marshalls or Austin out there.
After listening, chances are pretty good they're okay.
Yeah. He proudly put square headlights in a Corvette.
Just graduated Berkeley or something.
Yeah.
Walking around GM with his Birkenstocks on.
Oh, my God. And, when he came to somebody with that drawing Why did he not get smacked in the mouth?
I don't know.
Somebody checked it off. Okay, let's run that.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. Somebody has to be above these people that make these decisions.
That should be us.
It probably should.
I'm telling you, we could do that job.
Look,
Don't even get me started with the Camaro.
I was just going to say, I very rarely side with Dodge or Ford.
Or me.
You know, I mean, very rarely. But Tom and I both looked at each other and said, Dodge did a fantastic job
and I heard
with their cars.
Yep.
They really did.
They're
Even Ford did a better design job than GM did.
I think the Mustang looks great. It keeps getting better looking. I just do. What?
Nitro Scott. My daughter's name is Austin.
Well, that's Scott.
It's okay for a girl, and he named her.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Scott, I think we're not going to get into that.
Scott. Go sit in the corner and think about what you just did.
I can't mess with Scott. He's a good guy.
No, he's all right.
I just that they did a great job. GM, just let it go. And they, to me, they did it with the Corvette. Yes, the Corvette is unique. It's shocking, but they got that little stupid triangle window behind a big window.
Terrible.
I don't like they made
it's too short.
Camarvette or something.
It's too short in the back. The square lights killed it. I don't know.
And like we talked about CTSVs. And I said, I don't know. And Tom says, yeah, but like the CTSVs. I said, I don't know. I like the CTSVs. You're like, I do too.
Mm-hmm.
But
what about that two-door?
Completely forgot about it.
I know.
Never even thought about it.
You just erased it out of your head.
It was so ugly.
Yeah.
I would like, if I was going to buy a CTSV, it would not be a two-door. I don't like them.
No, it couldn't be. You didn't even know they made them. Like
a while back, I didn't.
Yeah, right.
Because that's not what I think. But like that car, that four-door car is cool. And then you got me here. It was really hard. I have a lot of respect for Paul Yaw, but I'm sorry, man. That CTSV wagon. I know people like them.
I like the wagon.
I just can't do it.
Can we do a vote? Can we do a poll? Tad, you're the IT guy.
I am. Okay.
Can't you do like a poll on our Facebook page or something, or Instagram, or
for what?
Do we have Snapchat?
Do we have a Snapchat?
No, we don't have anything, Ted.
No.
That was actually one of the main reasons we brought you in for the social media presence, and all we get are pictures of fucking eggs and egg McMuffins.
Yeah, how many egg pictures can you possibly put on anything?
Big things of eggs, so you know.
Oh,
but I don't like those cars. I don't like the wagon. I know that the wagon seems to have popularity.
That's cool looking.
Okay,
for a wagon.
Well, you know what? You know how that lumps you in with Fudd. He liked it. I mean. You know, maybe he ruined it for me. I don't know.
He doesn't like
maybe
it.
Maybe I should get 2 shots in the head now.
No, he was he was a CTSV wagon guy. He liked him.
Yes, he was.
And he's liked him forever. And I always just chalked it up to because he's fucking weird and doesn't like anything normal.
Doesn't he have a Prius?
His mom has a Prius.
Oh, but he likes it.
He does like it. Actually, Tad, I think, said one was okay too, didn't you?
The what?
A Prius?
No, say no.
Okay.
Prius? No, never.
But I just... and I mean, maybe we could get some inside information. I figured maybe you knew. That's what brought up the whole Corvette thing.
Yeah.
Because I figured...
Well, we were talking about those other guys that we're going to...
Yes, I figured maybe they'd know. And look, if they do it, it's not the end of the world. But to me, it changes everything. And
well, you know, the jury, I guess, is still out because I've heard a couple of different stories. You know, I heard the 19 ZR1's going to have it. It's not going to have it. You know, you just don't know. I don't know who's going to know.
I don't know either. I mean, I figured maybe you would have gotten a heads up as far as what parts to make, but
no.
I mean,
they
look,
don't care about us.
No, probably not.
Not at all. They may
obviously, or they listen to half the shit tell them to do.
Yeah, really.
Warranty voiders.
Yeah,
and you know when you take the sheer size of like a modular motor. I mean, you've seen them sitting out, all done.
They're giant.
Like, my God, this thing looks like it should be in a ship.
Well, you were building them for that guy.
Yeah, but I never did the top parts.
That's right. That's right. You just did short blocks.
Shorts.
Yeah.
I like building those short blocks, though. Only the aluminum ones, the cast iron ones.
Well,
the lightning motors.
It was pretty easy because there was nothing to it. It was a crank and 8 pistons and rods. I mean, it couldn't get any easier now.
Put the block spreader on that, though, to get the main.
Yeah, I had to figure something out for that. That was goofy, too. I don't know. I'd like to find out about that, and I don't want to be the stick in the mud. And I know that everything moves forward. And you brought up a good point. You know, a lot of us said the same thing about fuel injection because I brought up the direct injection stuff.
Yep.
I said that kind of right now it's a little bit of a hindrance. I'm not saying that you can't go faster. I'm not saying that people haven't done it because of course some people have.
Yeah.
But it changes everything the way we've done it. And I don't know if this one's for the better. I think that the dual overhead cam stuff is in the end for the better.
Yeah.
But think about the complexity now. What are all the aftermarket guys going to do? They're going to core up to make overhead cam heads.
Well, think about how much cams are going to cost, and that's been a problem in the sport compact side for a while now. Now you got 4 cams.
Yeah,
and you command way more money because nobody domestically does them. Now somebody does, but for a long time you couldn't get a Mitsu dual overhead cam or 4 cams for a Subaru. You couldn't get them here.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of it. I really don't. And it might be one of those things that it's just me, but I like the thought behind a camshaft. Think about all dynamics that come into that too. Now you can not only change installed center lines, you can change separation, you can do it on the fly.
Yep.
From a tech standpoint, that would be great. But I kind of don't want that much tech in with my race car. But
yeah, I would agree with that.
Whatever.
Plus you got 42 miles of chain.
Yeah. The bicycle chain engines in the Fords.
Kind of sucks.
Yeah, I'm just I'm not happy about any of it. And GM and Ford together, we've talked about this too. I want a diesel. I want a diesel SUV. Still haven't done it. I'm sure there's a reason. I'm sure there's something behind it that they haven't done it for EPA regulations, or it hurts their average or something.
I'm not sure about that. I just think that people at GM, the people driving the bus, are the people that should be sitting on the bus.
You know what? I've about had it with you, Alan. I just looked up at the screen. FUD. Oh, for fuck's sake. Are they going to talk to a guest at any point, or is it just going to be Mike and Tom? Now, here is where the douchebag in Mike is really going to shine through. Alan, go fuck yourself, you loser. You got fired from your job, and now you're going to bitch about what other people do? Get the fuck out of here. You're out. Douchebag. I guarantee he's sitting home tuned up.
Sure.
And that bothers me.
We know that. Yeah, I know.
3-finger night.
Whatever. This is your fault. You got me all wound up before we got on here.
Wow, I just got blamed for that?
Yes.
All right, I'll take it.
All right, so
like
we are going to have a guest on tonight that Alan won't be listening to.
Yeah, good guest too. He's going to miss that.
Yeah, we're gonna talk to Ben Strader from EFI University again, and we talked about it. What was it, last week? Which I know didn't make it published yet, but it will maybe tonight, maybe in a few minutes. Actually, I put it up before.
Yeah,
we had the discussion, and you and I are a little bit at odds on this, and we had the argument, not the argument, but the discussion. This was the square port versus cathedral port thing again. And I got to tell you, I kind of take the side of the cathedral port guys. To a point.
I know.
Let's be very careful.
I hear you.
To a point. I know I am not going to run out and put cathedral port heads on everything I own. No.
Or anything.
Or anything
for that matter.
Unless it's something that I have no other choice and that's what fits.
Yeah.
But that was a real interesting test. And we talked about this, and I'm sure Ben's going to have some insight. The problem is that you can't, this is like trying to prove a negative.
Right.
You can't.
Right.
You can't put that head on a big bore motor because then they say, well, that's not where they're good.
Yeah.
They're good on small bore motors. But you can't put the rectangular port head on a big bore motor. I've even heard the argument.
Small bore.
In a small bore motor. I've even heard the argument that people have said that, well, even the 4-inch bore motor is favorable. Well, then how are you gonna test this? Right. And so I'm sure what people are going to say is that Ben's test is invalid because bore size was too big or something. I mean, they're going to argue this. But from the power curve perspective, surprise, the smaller head made more on the bottom. I mean, what more is there to this?
Well, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. And Ben's as close to a rocket scientist as we're going to get. But listen, I can't even say it again, but I'm going to. We never said the cathedral ports didn't make power. I mean, Ben made 770 or something with that cathedral port motor. Now, it was 20-some inches bigger than the square port. But other than that, it had as much cam as you could put in it. It had the best head you could put on it. But you see,
in something here, and anybody that doesn't realize this happens must have got hit on the head with a rock, or they don't belong doing this. When the engine size gets bigger, the head acts proportionally smaller.
Sure.
I mean, so that's what happens. It's like putting a set of rectangular ports back in the early days on a 396.
Right.
You couldn't have made anything worse on the bottom.
Yeah.
If you tried.
It's like building a heavy 283.
Yeah. Exactly. Heavy 283 with big giant heads.
Yeah.
But that's I don't mind having the discussion about this stuff. But yes, if we were drag racing and we were like these people would say, if it was a comp class, well, nobody's gonna use that style of head. And they're not anywhere. And I don't want to beat the head thing back and forth because my mind was made up about this as soon as we started talking about it.
Yeah, it's kind of funny now.
But, Ben, there was a lot of interesting things about that motor. The RPMs, they turned it, where it made power, why it made power. It's actually a really neat project.
Yeah, and it's a really good, both motors are really good engines. They're very good power producing.
I mean, it looked to me like they were built as if you were building a comp engine without using maybe a comp style intake.
Yeah.
Is I guess what I would say.
Yep.
I mean, it was all serious stuff. Now, they were solid rollers.
Yeah.
They were not hydraulic rollers.
No, they were solid rollers.
And again, it's not to offend a hydraulic roller guys, because then those guys will get all, I turned my motor, whatever. I'm just saying that.
No, these things were purpose built to make a number. He wasn't looking, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I don't believe he was looking for average, although he got some pretty good average just based on the platform being good.
Well, see, that's in the average thing, it always made me crazy because there's certain areas that averages shouldn't be talked about. Like if we're talking about a drag race engine, I don't think anybody with a brain would want to average between 3,000 and 10,000.
No.
Why would you average there? You're never there.
No.
But like circle track, guys, they might need to worry about something as low as 2,500.
Depending on the track. Yeah, depending on the track you race on. Yep.
Right. So well, here's a gentleman right now. Let's get him on. Ben, how are you, buddy?
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm good. How about you guys?
Tom and I are now on different sides of the Cathedral Port argument to an extent.
I don't think we are.
That's so awesome. I love having controversy. It makes all of this worth doing.
So you doing good, sir?
I'm doing super awesome. I can't believe it's the end of the year and we're like crushing it busy. Normally we have nothing to do after Thanksgiving, and now I'm not even sure how we're going to get it all done. So whatever you guys are doing, like we talked on your show and now we're like filthy rich. It's awesome. Keep it.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Must all be us.
Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm going to plug Ben here so he doesn't have to himself. EFI University. I actually took their intro courses.
You did.
That I got signed up for.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. And it was funny. We talked about it because I basically spent the first course trying to get my iPhone mirroring thing to work. So it's running in the background. I'm kind of half paying attention to it. I went to take it. I failed everything. And I'm like, what? I know what the fuck. So I had to go back and do it again.
Yep.
But great courses, gives you a fundamental understanding of things that I can honestly now say that some of the stuff they talked about that now that I'm looking at like a stock computer configuration, some of that stuff is direct reference. I'm like, oh, that's why I learned about that.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, really worthwhile. Everybody should go do it. It'll certainly help your friend to this.
It's pretty cheap to do that online stuff. It's not like it's a huge commitment.
No, and production quality, I said it before to me. I remember when I first got it, like my AirPlay thing working and it showed up on the TV. I'm like, God damn.
Yeah.
That's pretty damn good.
In fairness, you called me about that, not even on the air. We were just bullshitting one day and you couldn't get over how good that stuff was.
Yeah. Shocked.
So
yeah, we spent a ton of money trying to make that production quality like as good as we could. In fact, we flew to North Hollywood and actually rented a studio with like professional camera people and like all the like dudes with the microphones. It was pretty intense for like a day and a half there and trying to get it all done within the time and the budget and all that. But in the end, it was worth it because it really like made us look super professional. I was happy with it.
It's better than a lot of stuff you would say from the perspective of like any kind of infomercial. I mean, it is amazing quality. And I think I said that to Tom too. I said, somebody who did this really knew what they were doing. This wasn't like, well, we're going to get some cameras and work on it and said, no.
It wasn't like us with the podcast.
No, not even close.
No, like legitimately the guy that we hired to do the producer stuff, like has worked with people like Matt Damon and like serious Hollywood people. It was a pretty cool deal, but it was very much like money intensive to do it. But I think we've probably broken even now after a year and a half or so, and it'll be fine. But the quality was worth it because everybody now sees like the level of professionalism that we want in all the stuff we do.
Yeah, if you're going to use that as a leader to get people to actually come take the courses, I mean, that level of professionalism has to, speak to the level of seriousness you're going to get at the actual school. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, so that was definitely the idea. Let's don't make it look like my kids did this with their iPhones. You know what I mean?
Was it Quentin Tarantino that did it?
No, but I think the guy probably had his same sense of humor. It was very intimidating there for a while until we figured out everybody's personalities. So.
Nice.
Yeah, I wasn't there.
But, well, that's cool. I'm glad you liked it, and the content is obviously good because I know, but the video quality really makes it an awesome experience. You know what I mean?
Yep. So anybody wanting to learn anything about this, or even just get your feet wet, get in there and take those introductory courses. And look, you're going to watch some of it, and kind of like I did, I'm like, why am I talking about kilopascals? What the fuck? I'm talking about PSI. I'm talking about boost. But in the end, it all really comes back to that.
Just like that kid in high school that said, what am I going to need algebra for?
Yeah.
I was so that guy.
And then boom. Wow.
Yeah, now I'm just like, science, bitches.
All right, well, let's talk about these two engines, because there's a lot of people have been talking about this stuff, and let's talk about the reason as to how and why, and then we'll get into the findings.
Okay, so I guess to be totally fair, I never really set these two engines up to be like a head-to-head or a back-to-back comparison, to be fair, right? Like, we started out years ago, we had an engine program that was built on Honda because they're a fantastic engine. And we realized that as fantastic as they were, nobody cares. Like, it's not a V8, and so the broad side of the market they wouldn't take the class because it was like, it doesn't have push rods, it's not a V8, beat my chest, pull my hair. So we decided to go do something with a V8 and use the same ideas and principles. Like, let's be honest, there's nothing special. It's just an engine. So I actually just bought that Cathedral port kind of as a pretty much a complete engine that somebody else had done and designed, and then said, okay, let's do it our way, and it ended up just working out really well and making ridiculous power, which we've talked about a bunch of times. But I kind of got to where I felt like that was what we were going to get from that engine without making major changes, and I wanted to do something that was more difficult and more challenging. And I don't care which side of the fence somebody's on, Cathedral port or rectangle port. The reality is, if you want to make huge RPM and huge power, you're not going to get there with a Cathedral port. You've got to have the rectangle port. But it's not a realistic comparison to say one is always better than the other. That's just never going to happen because it's so application specific. However, in this application, you don't have to like the truth in order for it to still be the truth, but the reality is flow matters. And so when we got a cylinder head that moves over 400 CFM of air compared to one that moves 310 or 15, you're not going to win that fight. So
that's one of those things that everybody always says, and you have to take issue with it because they say, well, flow numbers don't matter. Well, no, they don't matter. It's not the end all to be all, but they kind of have to be around where you need them to be. It's
no doubt. It's a math problem. We kind of set out with that to try to prove that you could still make a bunch of power without having a ton of flow. But at some point, flow always matters. You got to have flow if you want to make big power.
That is true.
How big was the Cathedral port motor again?
So that thing was 381 inches. That was a really, really big bore. It was 4,250 on a short stroke. So like a stock LS is 3,622. That thing was only 3.36. So that was part of the key of making that thing work. Getting the valve away from the cylinder. We intentionally did not go up in valve size on that deal like everybody always does. Go to a 2020 or a 2050 or a 2100. That thing has a 2-inch intake valve in it, and partially because we wanted to keep it away from the cylinder wall. Mm-hmm. So, that thing was 381 inches. It made 572 foot-pounds, which to me, and I'm sure we've probably talked about this a million times. I feel like every time I come to your show, I take over and talk too much. But
no, you don't.
Have it. Makes it easier for us.
Yeah.
The true
we're making sandwiches.
Measure of an engine's performance is how much torque did it make per cubic inch, and we're talking NA, right? I even teach my students that you can compare the boosted engines the same way. You just have to back out the pressure ratio that the boost added. So it's basically how much torque did you make per cubic inch per bar of boost, let's say, right? But if I take all that back out, what you'll find is, and you can work this out 15 ways to Sunday, and you'll find that an average engine will make 1.3 to 1.4, maybe 1.45 foot-pounds of torque at peak for every cubic inch. Now, a really good engine is going to make 1.5 or a little bit more, and the best engines in the world are only making 1.6, 1.65, and that's on gasoline, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that thing was pretty freaking awesome at making 572 foot-pounds out of only 381 inches. But see, everybody wants to talk about horsepower per cubic inch, and that's fun, and it's cool, and it's very impressive, but you can manipulate it with RPM, which is exactly what we did when we went to the square port engine.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's essentially what happened with Formula One, with NASCAR, with Pro Stock. They put limits on everything.
With everything?
Because they finally figured out that the more you turn the noisy thing in the front, you can take advantage of multiplication. And that's what they did.
That's right. Yeah, so as long as you can keep putting gear ratio in the thing, like, we said this on one of the shows back, but like, the RPM is going to beat you every single time. The only time it's not better is when you got to pay for it, the money part, But,
that's right.
You know what I mean? If I can take 400 inches and displace that air 6,500 times a minute or 8,500 times a minute, you're just going to have more total airflow, And so that's why I say, like, at some point, the flow always matters. I mean, if you just do the math, how many cubic feet of air per minute am I trying to move through this engine at, say, 8,500 or 8,800 or 9,200, well, you have to have a port that meets that demand, or there's nothing you can do.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny how far this has gone.
What do you mean? The Cathedral port argument?
Yeah, I mean, our original argument was with twin turbos, the square port would be better, and everybody lost their minds, and they're just wrong. They're just, you could stop right there. They're just wrong because we're talking about.
It's a math problem.
Yeah, it is. But it's gone completely off the rail. I'm glad it has. So, sorry, go ahead. Continue.
So that was kind of the reason that we did this engine the way we did it. So, we had what was arguably a relatively small LSX engine, 381. A stock one's 376. The first thing that most people do is put a 4-inch or bigger stroke in them and make a bunch of cubic inches.
Yep.
Well, the problem is, as soon as you do that, for any given RPM, you've now increased the piston speed. And when you do that, the piston demands more from the port, and you simply reach the choke point of the port at an earlier RPM.
Yep.
Like, you're just going to run out ahead sooner. Well, because horsepower is a function of RPM, if I peak my RPM sooner, I'm never going to make the same amount of power as if I peaked it later. So with the same port, if I simply make the engine demand less by making it smaller and turn the RPM up, you're going to make more power almost every single time. Not every single time, but almost every single time.
Interesting concept.
Well, I mean,
Mike's got a very puzzled look on his face.
No, not puzzled, but I'm just sitting here because this is all stuff that like people that are not into this port-shaped Kool-Aid, would understand. This is what Ben is talking about is building a package. Mm-hmm. If these and again, exactly. If you have a set of rules in place, well, then your changes you would select the parts that you can based on the rule package you have in place. If you have no rules, I can't see why you would do this. Now, Ben, what were these heads exactly?
I was just going to ask that.
Yep, just so we get this clear.
So the Cathedral ones were stock 243 castings that Lingenfelter did their stage 2 porting on, and then somebody over at Bischoff in Indiana did some hand finishing in the throats or whatever. But I mean, they were still a factory casting head with stock valve sizes. The new heads are a completely different game. Like, these are what they call the Pro Elite heads from RHS, which is, in my opinion, the absolute hands down best kept secret in the industry for square port stuff. It's a raised runner cylinder head. They make two versions of it. They make a 291 cc and they make a 307 cc head. Most people will never touch that head because they look at it and they go, "Oh my God, that port volume's too big. That's crazy." Well, first of all, if you're still judging a head by port volume, you're stuck in the 70s, way off track.
Hold on, I got to stop you right there. Because Tom and I had this discussion when we were talking about an 18-degree circle track motor.
Yep.
I said, of course the port's bigger. It's tilted way up in the air, and it's like 3/4 of an inch longer. Of course it's bigger.
It doesn't have any choice.
Yes. So if I make the tube longer, of course it's going to hold more volume, but it's not going to have nearly the effective airspeed if I just made a big, giant, short, fat, square port. You know what I mean? So because of that, those heads are raised a bunch, but they have very good, like high, really fast airspeed. But like, dude, these things you could buy off the shelf for like, I don't know, $1,200 or $1,300 each. They're bare, but they're already CNC ported. They have a valve job. You can buy valves from Manly, from Victory, from 10 different places, you know what I mean? And put them in there, and you can run them, and they have crazy good flow numbers. Like the 291 flows a little over 400 CFM. Their giant 307 port flows 450 CFM. Like, that's almost as much as all the aftermarket, like canted, tilted, blah, blah, blah. They're so good that I went back to the flow bench a week later because I didn't believe it, and they still flowed the same number. Now, most guys aren't trying to push the valve open 800 thousandths of an inch where they flow that number, but my point is they flow good everywhere. Like, they crush it from 100 thou up. So when I looked at that, it was like, okay, let's take these heads that are inline, use standard hardware. These are not like fancy canted valve, tilted, twisted, blah, blah, blah. These are like bolt on a stock block kind of heads, and let's see what we can do with them. So we purposely made the engine smaller because we knew that A, that would allow us to run a higher RPM before we reached the choke point of the head, and B, I wanted to see how badly we could crush that Cathedral port engine with 30 less cubic inches, or whatever it was, 20, I guess. But that it's exceeded my expectations at this point, and so now we had to raise the bar. But I'm fairly certain the next time we run that engine, I've got some changes we're making. It's going to make over 900 naturally aspirated. It's 358 inches.
Yeah,
this thing is bad to the bone.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
It really is.
Because I remember good comp numbers back like in the late 90s, early 2000s, and that's a nice number.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah. So guys that aren't in the know, that haven't been listening or whatever, like, this thing's 358 inches. It was 15.5 or 15.6 compression ratio. We peaked earlier than I wanted to. It peaked about 87 or 8640 or something like that. It made 867 horsepower. But here's the thing. You can cheat that number by running more RPM. So everybody goes, yeah, but it didn't make any torque. Well, actually, it made 563 foot-pounds of torque, which is only about 9 foot-pounds less than the engine that was 20 cubic inches bigger.
Mm-hmm. Just made a different point.
You can't say that it didn't make any torque. This thing makes a mountain of torque. In fact, it makes more torque per cubic inch than the Cathedral port one did. And, to make the big power number, we just got it to turn the RPM. And there's a lot that goes into that, goofing around with the oiling system and goofing around with the ring package. I mean, like, I've got a stock LS3 stroker deal, 100% stock block, 100% stock unported heads. We put a cam in it. We put a 4-inch stroke in it. It makes like 605 with 100% stock heads and stock intake manifold, right? That thing uses like between 18 and 23 gallons per minute of oil flow. We have an actual oil flow meter on the dyno that we look at. That's all stock stuff. This engine that turns 9,500 RPM only uses like 10.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a lot of work that goes into getting these things to do that. That's not just buy this part, and bolt it together and you're good. But we wanted to show that, like, if you don't have a rule book and you can do whatever you want, dude, you can make a crazy amount of power, but for not a crazy amount of money.
It's so funny because I just said that to Tom.
Yep.
And this is going to be unpopular with probably a fair amount of our listeners. And I don't mean to sound like an elitist or a douchebag, but here's what it comes down to. You guys have no rules. I think there's one or two guys here that listen, like Nitro Scott being one of them, super stock guy and stock guy.
Yep.
If you don't have rules, I'm not going to say you haven't accomplished anything, but you don't know what it takes to make a car work.
Because you don't have to.
Right. And a lot of people don't get this. And that's where you really learn stuff. And like doing what you did on a dyno, trying to get every last little bit out of exactly what you have to work with, not by changing a part, by working with what you have.
That oil flow numbers are crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's good stuff. Yeah. And people don't think about that.
No, and so we start by running it without a restrictor. These are solid roller camshaft stuff, so we don't need a ton of oil up there. And so anything that you put up in the top, has to roll back down and fly around and get it all over the parts that are moving fast. And
now,
so,
what block was that? Was that a standard LS type block, or was it like a Dart Next?
No, so that's actually an LS Next. They're what they call the SHP block, which is different than the LS Next block.
Oh, yeah, it's their kind of Walmart version of the LS Next.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The cheap version. Yep. 100%. Yep.
Yeah, does that get a real oil pan, or is it still a Y block?
That's still a Y block.
Okay.
So they did that because what happened was they made the LS Next block, which is killer, but everybody bitched and moaned about having to run the Moroso pan spacers or get a special oil pan or whatever. So they basically made a less expensive version of the LS Next, which uses less dense material, so it's not as hard. It only has the oil pan, it's still a Y block, but the major difference that I can see between the two blocks is the LS Next uses like DRCE oiling with double oil crossovers in the lifter valley, and they only use one on the SHP block. So it's a little bit of a simplified block that's a really, really good option for a guy that wants to build a ton of power but doesn't trust a factory block.
Is the LS Next compacted graphite?
I don't know if it, like all of them are, or if you have to order that special, but that's definitely an option.
Okay, because you said it was way harder than the SHP. I didn't know they changed material. I just thought they changed the tool.
I'm still stuck on people that, like, if I had a comp race one of these things, I would want the ability to put an oil pan on that intersected, say, at 90-degree plane with the crankshaft, because
of course
I would want to be able to get the oil, whatever was coming off, as far away as I could.
Yeah, control the oil.
Dude, I remember.
Yeah, so the only.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I remember long ago, not too long, like 5-8 years, something like that. Total Seal did a little test they were testing rings and they were just trying stuff, and they put a 1-inch spacer on an LS oil pan and made like 40 horsepower. So, I mean, and the Hemi guys did the big windows in the side of the block. I mean, Y blocks are terrible.
Yep.
But anyway.
But see, Ben did the right thing there, got consumption way down, so you don't have quite as much flying around to worry about.
Exactly.
That's my thing. You know, the reality is most guys in the LS world are not going to go buy an LS block and then spend $600 or $800 or $1,000 on an oil pan. So what else can you do? And so, you know, another big kind of trick that we do, and it's not really a trick. I mean, again, everything's just a math problem. But when you look at that block, the skirts that they've done are they're basically like scalloped out on the inside, assuming they're trying to keep the weight out of the thing. You know, the thing's heavy enough as it is. But the problem is, like, there's a bunch of volume in there that, you know, like if you're trying to pull vacuum on the thing, that you got to get rid of. And so we take about, I don't know, 20 or 30, I guess it's about 33 cubic inches of volume per side that we fill with epoxy and take out of the block.
Oh, just literally fill the volume.
Yeah, so what we do is we heat the block up with like a torch and get it warm, and then we fill all those cavities in with epoxy and then let it dry overnight and basically reshape the inside of the block to reduce the volume in the cavity.
Interesting.
So, you know, this thing, yeah, like that thing at 90, well, it never made less than 21 inches of pan vacuum from 6,500 when we start the dyno pull to 9,500 when we shut it off.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was good.
I guess you DLC coded everything.
Yeah, I was going to say good pens.
Yeah, we run a DLC coated pin, and we run a small pin and shorter, and you know, we pay attention to the bearing surface area between, like, so a lot of guys don't think about that, right? Like, how long is your wrist pin? Well, I don't know. How long does it need to be? Well, you know, based on the diameter of the pin, we try to make sure that we have enough bearing, like, surface loading area in the piston. But obviously, if you make a ton of area there, well, then you end up with a heavy piston. So we play this game between pin diameter and bearing surface area when we design the piston to try and get that as small as possible, and then DLC coat everything. And we do forced pin oiling where we actually drill from the oil scraper ring, we drill from there down into the ring groove. So as it's scraping it off the wall, it's forcing that oil into the pin, you know. So there's a bunch of cool stuff that happens in there that's not in a normal piston. But, I mean, that's the things you got to do if you want to make them go fast and live and do all that kind of stuff, you know.
Do you pull a dry slump stage from top of the motor?
I did not on this engine, mainly because we were restricting the oil so much from the top that I didn't feel like I needed to. But that's something we probably will end up doing on the spinal tap engine that's coming up. That's coming up next. So at some point we may even enclose the cam tunnel, and then we'll have to go from up there. But so far we haven't had
Yeah. You know, I gotta say something. If this thing was not a dry sump, and correct me if I'm wrong, you would not have filled the volume inside, because wouldn't that cause the thing to blow oil around more from the swept volume?
Well, I don't want to pretend like I know what's happening inside the crankcase with regards to oil blowing all around, but I would imagine that it makes life harder, yes.
Yeah. I just don't want our listeners to think that they should run out a cheap fix in everything. Is
no,
to
don't
go
do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You get a whole bunch of guys going to Home
Fill the
Depot. You
block.
got engine block epoxy?
Yeah. That's all. I
Well, we do the same thing like on the valley plate on LS. It's a flat aluminum plate that covers the lifter valley.
Yep.
So we went to a CNC shop and had them draw up a deal. And so when you take our cover plate off, it's basically triangular on the bottom. So it takes all of that
void
volume out of the center cavity as well.
Yeah, stuffer plate.
So all in, we've taken about 120 cubic inches of volume out of the internal block volume.
Wow.
Yeah. So that makes the oil pump's job a lot easier trying to pull a vacuum.
So you attack this thing kind of like a comp guy or like a cup guy would. I mean, this reminds me of the dissertation Andy Randolph gave at ATEC many years ago, where they just look at every little thing like that you can.
I mean, yeah, you kind of have to, and in some ways, we live in such an awesome time to be an engine builder because most of the stuff you can buy. I mean, buying a block from Dart buys you so many advantages and so much technology that you'll never get to in a stock GM block that had a different application in mind, intention. You're like walking right into 75% of pro stock technology on day one when the block shows up to your shop. You know what I mean? So I don't think enough guys put enough value on that kind of stuff. And same way in cylinder heads, it's like, my God, you know what it takes to get a 23-degree small block head to flow 400 CFM? Will they even? Do they?
No, they won't.
No.
And it's like you buy that for $1,500. It's crazy.
And it's done. The biggest time is the wait for the UPS guy. Right? It's crazy.
Like all the memes out there.
Just buy it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ben, in the Valvetrain side of this thing, what did it have for lifters and lifter diameter?
Okay, so this is a really interesting story because this new engine, and that's really all I'm talking about now because we've kind of, beat the Cathedral port to death. Although it's now in my Mustang and getting ready to debut on New Year's Eve in Tucson Dragway at the Hangover Nationals. We're going to take that engine out and see how it runs. But
it's going to go faster than the dyno says just because it has those heads. That's the magic.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing that's murdering it right now is I have a Liberty 5-speed for the car, but I chickened out and I didn't put it in there.
Oh.
Because I have zero skills as a driver yet, and so I put a power glide in it, and so that's going to murder it for now. But once I get a few laps on it and we put the 5-speed in there, it'll be silly. I'll be surprised if that thing can't run in the 890, 895 range in sea level conditions.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that the glide's going to kill you as much as you think. If you get the right converter in there and the right rear gear, there's something to be said about your power band and being on power the whole time. You just got to get everything right.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, I might be pleasantly surprised, but me, I'm always kind of negative and self-depreciating, and it's never good enough. We got to try harder next time. That's just my style. But the reality is, it'll probably be pretty darn good.
It'll be good. It would be way more fun with a Liberty, though.
It's going to be, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So. Okay, so now on this deal, again, you got to remember what the goal is, right? I didn't have necessarily a class rule book to build to, but I did have to build something that was within the realm of reality for regular guys. Otherwise, you can't associate with it. You know what I mean? So I really wanted on the first couple of iterations on this thing to use an 842 stock diameter lifter with a 750 wheel, which is just stock stuff. And so I used that a 96 245 comp Sportsman solid roller lifter.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a whatever the melanite or DLC coated they're under $1,000 for a set. You can buy them. They're really nice, link bar style deal. So you get rid of the trays and all that kind of crap, But I coupled that with somewhat of a unique or an exotic valve spring for this deal. Even though it's not that special, people aren't really aware of it or using it. And it's basically a double conical valve spring. So it's not a beehive. It's actually a cone-shaped spring, but there's two of them, an inner and an outer. So the challenge for that is that, the benefit is with the double conical, what you end up with is a spring that has a naturally higher frequency, and it doesn't have all that. Like normally when you have a double spring, the inner spring is kind of like almost press fit into the outer spring so that it dampens it, so it doesn't get out of control. Well, not having that inner spring rubbing the outer spring gets rid of a ton of heat and friction, but it has to be located properly. So those springs have like a spring seat and a retainer that specially locates the inner spring so that it never touches the outer spring as they're going up and down.
That's got to be pretty crazy. I mean, it makes sense, but it's got to be pretty crazy. I'm trying to picture what the spring seat would look like.
It'd be two steps.
So if you just go like Google a 7245 comp double conical spring, you could buy them from Summit or Jegs or whatever, but like nobody does. Like they don't know that much about them. The thing's like an inch 625 at the base. It's like a huge spring at the base, but it's like a normal inch whatever 275 or 300 at the top. So it's really, really small, lightweight retainer, which of course is good for high RPM. So these things are like 200 pounds on the seat and they're like 700 open. So it's a pretty high rate spring without a ton of seat pressure. So we ran this thing the first time around and we were taking it. We probably made 35 or 40 pulls on the dyno to well beyond 9,400, like 9,500, hitting the rev number several times. And it wasn't really that happy. Like the power curve was good. It was okay, but it wasn't amazing. Like it tended to flat out at the top. And so I kind of started to suspect maybe something wasn't right. And so after about 428 million pulls on the thing, I finally decided, normally about every 5 or 6 pulls, I'll stop and go lash the valves, but it wasn't doing anything silly. It was repeating. And so after about a dozen or so pulls, I finally said, maybe we ought to pull the covers on the thing. And when I did, I found a bunch of small pieces of broken valve spring. And I was like, whoa, we're like on the verge of losing this thing. So we quit, and it made 811 at that point. And we knew that there was a number of issues with the design of the engine. I was trying to use a cast aluminum, like off the shelf, totally untouched imported Edelbrock manifold, single 4-barrel, that kind of stuff. So anyway, what was really interesting when we took it apart is I found that only the intake springs, and it was only the inner springs and only at the bottom that were breaking. And so, of course, we got with Billy and started going, okay, what do we need to do to make this thing happier? And we found out what it was doing is the acceleration rate on the opening ramp of the intake side was so aggressive that it was basically like slapping the valve, like smacking the valve. And the inner spring is so soft in that thing that it was literally like bouncing around and walking around on the spring seat. And so it was really kind of a great opportunity because Billy's been working on a new series or a mini series of cams that he calls like a low shock kind of opening that just really calms everything down on the opening side, but still leaves a ton of lift like when you're at bottom dead center. So in other words, your closing is still really fast, but the opening is slow. And what we found is that really helps the engine's volumetric efficiency because it allows you to keep control of the valve train, but basically what happens is your initial opening velocity is so slow that you could add duration to the camshaft and not necessarily give away torque like you traditionally would. So yes, it's technically open, and yes, it's technically off the seat, but it's so little off the seat that it's not doing anything flow-wise. So you can't even really look at these camshafts with normal duration numbers like you traditionally would and think that they would work. I mean, we're running like 280 degrees at 50 on this thing, and it's like 830-ish lift, right? Normally you would think that would just murder the thing on torque, and like it lost nothing. Going from our earlier cam, which was 276, to this 280 cam, it didn't lose any torque anywhere by doing that, but it completely stabilized the valve train, and like now we can run the thing almost like a Saturday night endurance racer, like in a circle track deal.
So the front half of the opening is slowed down? I mean, it can't all be slowed down.
Correct. So it's a very asymmetric design. We look at a thing called major intensity.
Yeah.
where we look at the difference in duration of the camshaft from the advertised numbers to the 50.
Right.
And let's say that just for example, let's say that's 30 degrees. So you would assume that 15 is on the opening side and 15 is on the closing side. Well, in this way, we might have like 18 or 19 degrees on the opening side, really, really takes a long time, but only like 12 or 13 degrees on the closing side. So your closing is really fast. So it's a very asymmetric, not a very egg-shaped style lobe that we're working on with this thing. I mean, this is like extremely brand new, like in the last couple of months that these have been designed. In fact, Billy's giving a presentation next week at the AETC thing, and he's going to use a lot of that research that we did in his presentation, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, the key to this thing was trying to use an 842 stock style lifter at 9,500 RPM and make it live. And so the first go around really, to be honest, wasn't that successful. We beat up the seats, we broke some valve springs, it kind of beats the lifters up a little bit. You know, it crashes the axles and it wants to spread the lifter out. And when that happens, it gets galled in the lifter bore. So we kind of went back and fixed all that, used the same, new, but the same style lifter, and just slowed the cam profile down. And it's amazing. The thing's so beautiful now. It makes more power everywhere because of the extra lift you have at bottom dead center, taking advantage of the inertia, the ram air charge, but it doesn't lose torque anywhere as you normally would when you'd add 4 degrees of camshaft.
And that thing is actually working at 200 on the seat, huh?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Mike's looking all puzzled.
In fact,
No, I'm not puzzled. I'm just impressed. And I'm like, man,
no, this is what you did.
it's been a long time since I did this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. I was like, they're that good, huh?
Mike actually taught.
Billy didn't think that,
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Mike actually taught me most of this shit about cams because he was into cam stuff and knew Billy way back in the day.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, man, a lot has changed, and you probably know that, but I think we probably wouldn't even need the 200 on the seat. Now, I was scared, to be honest with you, because I'm the one that has to pay for all this, but Billy didn't, we were using a tool steel retainer on both sides on the first go-around, and he didn't think I needed to do anything with that, but I got scared, and I went to a titanium retainer on the intake side, and it took about 9 grams off of our retainer mass, so I felt like that was a good insurance policy. But I wouldn't be scared at all to put the tool steel one back on now that we have this new profile kind of worked out.
Hey, Ben, one of our guys wants to know how much the rod bolts cost in that motor.
They're pretty darn expensive. They're actually small. They're only a 3/8 rod bolt, but it's a custom-made 625 bolt. So, you could buy the rods from Dyer's for, $1,600-$1,800, but it's a couple $300 more or so for the rod bolts in that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And once you say custom age, that fixes it right
Exactly.
there. Ooh.
It's custom price.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're nice. It's a nice little piece.
Yeah.
And that's a small, it's a small connecting rod, small Honda rod bearing we use in that thing. It's an inch AAA journal instead of an LS's 2100. So we use a really small rod in that.
Very nice.
A couple of reasons for that. I mean, we don't really have an issue with it because we're not running that much stroke. But when you start running really large lobes on the camshaft, you got to make room so the rods don't crash into the camshaft. So a lot of guys initially started going to that Honda journal to make the rod outside diameter physically smaller and clear the big lobe on the camshaft. We're only running like 825, 830 lift, so it's not that much lift. But I like the lower bearing surface speed at this higher PM, so that's why we choose the Honda bearing.
Sure.
Now, was that a standard? Unless you mentioned it and I missed it. What was the cam bore on that thing? Was it a standard cam core or was it something big?
That thing's a 55 millimeter Babbitt bearing, nothing special whatsoever.
But it's they're farther away from the crankshaft than a 23-degree engine anyway, right?
They are, exactly. Yeah. So, those are some, it used to be in the old days, you really, like with a 23-degree, going to a 50 millimeter core was a big upgrade.
Oh, yeah.
Stock LS cam is a 55. I mean, it's huge,
Yep.
So it offers almost no benefit to go to a 60 millimeter camshaft for 99% of applications that guys are doing LSs. We run a 60 in the spinal tap deal, but I mean, you're talking about 1,250 pounds of spring pressure trying to do 11,000 RPM. So there's some benefit there, but on anything normal that goes, say, like 8,500 or even 9,000 and less, I see no reason to go anything other than the stock journal size on an LS camshaft.
That kind of goes back to what you said before, golden age. I mean, you'd pay extra for that. That was something.
You used to pay huge money for that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. All this stuff like the keyway lifters and all the work that Jessel did with that stuff in the very beginning was all done by Charlie Weston. He was the guy you had to send stuff to get all that done. Yep. And they were doing, I remember Charlie back then, God, cam tunnels, like to have one done was like $750 because he had special stuff to do it. And now you tell Dart, hey, look, I want it with that tunnel. Like, no sweat.
Yep.
Yep.
There you go.
Included in the price. Thanks. Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like, and so I'm going to keep the 55 millimeter camshaft in this thing, but we are going to move now to a Jessel 937 keyway lifter, mainly because I know from spintroning stuff with Billy that you're getting very close to the limit. Just the the loading of the pushing the lifter sideways, what they call pressure angle, pushing the lifter sideways in the lifter bore on that 842 lifter and the small wheel and all that. Like we're really getting close to what I feel comfortable paying for. So, the bigger lifter and the bigger 850 wheel is just an insurance policy to make the Valvetrain smoother. And then we're going to put more duration in it again. I think this next go around, we're going to be at like 284 at 50 and move the power band up 2 or 3, maybe 400 RPM. And it's going to make over 900.
When is this going to happen?
Well, we generally do this class every quarter, and we just ran the engine a couple weeks ago. So my guess is that'll be February-ish.
Okay.
Basically, I just wait for the next class and then, do the design change, spend a bunch of money, hurry up and get it all done, and then wait for the next class. But it's a cool piece.
It's a good time to be in Phoenix.
Here's what a lot of people don't know is that this engine, we ran with a single 4-barrel Edelbrock Super Victor intake. So it was a 4500 flange, but with an adapter to go to a 4150, regular 4-barrel. And we didn't run a carburetor. We run an EFI throttle body, but same, style and all that.
Yep.
We maxed the thing out at like 819 horsepower. We took that thing off, and frankly, the runners are way too long, and there's not enough taper. Like, I knew all that. That's fine. We just wanted to see what we could do with it. We take that thing off, and we had a custom intake from CFE, Carl Foltz, with basically it was like a Holley high ram that they had modified and shortened the runners and made a bunch of taper and did a custom plenum for and all that. We put this thing on, right? Like the first pull, I should say we put the top on it, so now it has dual 4-barrels, dual 4150s. Put the thing on, the first pull, it almost won't go all the way to red line. It runs so bad. And I look over and I'm like, well, it's running so bad because it's so lean. Like this thing's moving so much more air that with the same fuel, it almost wouldn't run. I mean, it went from making 819 to 748. And I'm like, oh, geez, this thing sucks. And then I look over and I go, oh my God, it's so lean.
Yeah, you didn't hurt it.
Yeah, well, it was so lean it probably couldn't hurt itself.
Yeah, it was past that point. Yeah, past the torch point.
Yeah. And so we put some fuel in it. We make another run. By the third pull, this thing's up 48 horsepower on a manifold change. Mm-hmm. So the day before testing this thing, we did the same thing with headers. We had a couple different sets of headers, and we were swapping them around, doing this, that, and the other. And there was 50 horsepower in the header. So I'm sitting here looking at this thing going, wait a minute. So you could buy the best bearings, the best crankshaft, do all the camshaft work and all this stuff with the Valvetrain, and you can knock 100 horsepower out of the engine with an intake manifold and a frickin' set of headers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's how important the whole entire system as a package becomes when you start designing stuff at this level.
Yeah, and people just don't have the ability to test like that. Did you put one of the Cyclones on it, or whatever they're called, that Tornado?
No, I should have.
You should have. I mean, it's 20 horsepower, right?
Is that the spinny thing?
Yeah.
Probably would have exploded.
You could have put 2 of them on, Ben.
The thing is, I was kind of worried about breaking the dyno, and I didn't want to do that.
I got it. I got you. Yeah.
You're
going to need it for the next class. Good call. Good call.
Exactly.
Sorry I brought it up.
But, yep, we were trying to have some secrets. It's funny. I was actually just talking about this today, where we are really weird at our place because we walk this fine line between pro stock, everything's a secret. You get in trouble if you try to take a picture standing outside the semi in their pit, and then there's us who have almost no secrets, and if you give us money, we'll tell you everything. You know what I mean? We're like whores. But but at the same time, we have to have a little bit of intrigue to make people go, oh wow, that's interesting. I wonder what else I could learn if I go there. So it's weird trying to play both sides of that fence. And by the way, I really can't say too much at the moment. There's a lot of details that are working themselves out and are coming, but there's a very, very strong chance that this year we could be adding some real current actual like right now up to date 500-inch pro stock stuff to our program.
Wow.
Meaning you could potentially come to our place and put your hands on a real one that's going to go and be in an actual race in the 2018 season.
That's pretty cool. That's very cool.
Yeah. So as that becomes more, firm, I'll for sure tell you guys about it. But
yeah, that'd be great.
Amazing opportunity. Yeah. So
that's very cool.
The EFI, them going to EFI, even though the class is basically dead in the next couple of years, them going to EFI has really been a good thing for our business.
Yeah. What a shame about all the pro stock stuff. I mean,
I know.
I don't know how you would have fixed it. I mean, and all the ways that I could think of to fix it, it would be like the other classes that now, or it might as well be bracket classes. Yeah. I don't really know how you could fix it.
Yeah, WJ said that once. He said it's the most expensive bracket racing in the world, and effectively that's what it became.
Yeah.
So, there's probably some glimmer of hope, and there's some ideas that guys have that'll make it good, but I mean, it's just the common problem. The end guy that pays for the ticket to go watch the races can no longer relate to the cars.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want to see them. They want to see Pro Mod.
Right.
And I can understand that, because if there's anything that ain't relatable, it's a Pro Mod.
Yeah, but they're cool.
Well,
except
that if I look at a Pro Mod, I go, I could buy a turbo and I could buy some nitrous and I could, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like the no prep and the that style stuff is literally just grudge racing is just taking over, because a guy can drive around all week with his car and then put slicks on it on the weekend and go to the track and like spray a bottle of nitrous through it or turn the boost up 5 pounds, or, you know what I mean? Like,
it's literally more doable. It just is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really feel like I can do this. Therefore it's more interesting for me to watch. If I feel like I'll never, ever be able to take a picture of a freaking intake manifold of a pro stock car, I'm going to lose interest.
Mm-hmm.
And so hopefully we can generate a little bit of interest if we can pull this little magic trick off here in the next 6 months or so. But it would be a really cool thing. Even if the class ends up dying, it'll be a really special way to finish it off, to show people what was happening behind the scenes all those years.
That would be great.
Just the amount of money that got dumped into that stuff. My God.
Yeah, I know.
Ben knows the right guys. He's talking about faults. He knows exactly what goes into one.
Yep.
Ugh. Yeah, and honestly, Pro Mod's becoming the same way. Like, it's literally quickly getting out of reach of most people.
Yeah.
The problem is that as technology advances, technology costs money. People with money will spend it, and and I always get a kick out of this because it's happened in every class that I ever saw. I guess this is why when you get older, you're like, you kids are stupid, because every single class, everybody was like, well, we don't get paid enough now because we're spending so much.
Right.
You idiots would have spent this much money if you were racing for a hot dog.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Yep. That's not why people do this. It's not.
No, we race for a little plastic trophy.
Yep.
Man.
Bragging rights. But, you say that, but here's the deal. Now I look at it and I go, well, if you came to me today and said, hey, I'm going to be your sponsor, I'm going to write you a check, you can build a car and do whatever kind of racing you want to do. Dude, how many Pro Mod races have there been in the last year and coming up for the 2018 season that have like $100,000 purses?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're telling me I could spend $3 million and go pro stock racing to win $25,000, or I could spend $500,000 and build a top level Pro Mod car and potentially win $100,000 at one race?
Yeah, it's a better risk versus reward for sure.
And by the way, those races are all over the place.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
And
good.
There's only one reason those purses are that big. Because there's enough fans putting the asses in the seats that care to watch it.
That's right.
So, if you're smart, you're getting on that train now and going, everything else is cool for nostalgia purposes, but we got to be smart about this.
Follow the money.
Well, the grudge thing, exactly what Ben said to me, is 100% the truth. Those cars are regular looking cars. They don't look out of control. They don't look crazy. They're not extended, wheelbase and all. They're cars.
They're kind of cool,
and people watch it because it's the closest thing to watching a street race, but in a legal setting. I like all that stuff.
You look at a guy with a Fox body Mustang and a couple of turbos, and he's carrying the front wheels through the 660-foot cone and going 190 miles an hour in the 8th mile, and you're just like, Jesus, that's crazy. I wonder if I could buy those turbos. Well, yeah, actually you can. Precision will sell them to you. You call up and you order it on the website, and it shows up in the UPS truck.
And people do it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Apparently, it's not that hard.
Last question, Ben. Somebody had asked this before. They probably didn't see any of the articles or writings about this. What ECU did you use to control these motors? What did you use?
Gosh, I get asked that all the time. We run a bunch of different stuff, but that particular one sitting on the engine dyno that day was using a Haltech 2500 Elite. But I mean, the way our dyno's set up, we can run like 5 ECUs on the same day. We've got a bunch of different harnesses and ECUs and all that. But the bottom line is that particular throttle body, the way that it works is all the sensors are built into it, and it has one big connector. And that harness that I have that fits that goes to our Haltech ECU. So we ran that on a Elite 2500 ECU.
Gotcha.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult to be EFI University and then like have people say, "Hey, what do you think is the best ECU?" I'm like, our sponsors. They're all good. It depends which class we're teaching that day, right? But,
oh, that's funny.
Anyway,
I guess it's kind of the same thing about dynos too, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. Except in the dyno world, there are good ones and bad ones. So you definitely get what you pay for in that world.
Oh yeah.
I feel like the ECUs, any of them can hook up if you follow the directions and you read the directions, you do it properly, can make your engine run really good. But there's definitely a difference between a snap-on ratchet and like the Harbor Freight one you get, and I feel like dynos are the same way.
I would tend to agree.
I would tend to agree too.
It's a tool. It's a tool. You know what I mean? So
who's the Harbor Freight one? Jesus. Anyway,
I wanted to say Cobalt, the ones you get at like Lowe's, but I have a bunch of those, so I'd feel bad if I said that and somebody saw them. So.
Yeah.
And you never know who might be signing you a check one day, so you got to be careful.
Yeah.
Exactly. Harbor Freight, if you're listening, we really like your stuff.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Okay, now I guess last thing, a guy asked.
The last
thing. A guy asks. He wanted to know if you think hydraulic rollers have any hope in competitive racing. Boy, is that an open-ended question.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because
I think it's an easy question. I think absolutely, if we're talking about like the newer, like short travel technology. I know for a fact the short travel stuff has been way over 9,000 RPM. So I see no problem with that at all. In fact, we were just talking in the shop today about this new ultra street class and what turbo to run. Should you run 260s or a 76 or whatever? And should we do a solid or a hydraulic? And I'm like, dude, I'd put a short travel hydraulic in that thing. I'd turn it 8,200 and I wouldn't take the valve covers off till the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And who doesn't want to do that?
Yeah, exactly. And it's crazy that you even can't, but once again, you can just call up and buy it.
But again, on the other side of this, if you tell somebody you're going to race comp or pro stock, I don't think that that's ever going to have a place. I don't think that's ever where it's going to be.
So again, application specific, right?
Sure.
Like those kind of things, of course not, the valve speed, I guess you could say, one way you could say is like Darren Morgan at Rare Morrison likes to say valve speed is king. Well, it is, but what you really mean is curtain area is king. Getting the valve away from the seat as fast as possible to get the port moving air is what matters. So in order to achieve those kinds of acceleration rates, and you're going to need, really aggressive cam profiles and really aggressive valve springs. And so obviously that's not a good fit for a hydraulic, but for a grudge racer guy that's going to race Friday night drags and Saturday night drags that wants to turn less than 8,500.
Yep. Have it live and have it drive and sure.
Yeah. Wouldn't even think about anything other than a short travel, like a link bar style lifter.
Cool. Good info.
That's what makes this cool. There's a lot of guys with different ideas than me, and it doesn't mean that I have to be right.
I got nothing. He answers all the questions all the time. I told you, he's like a wizard.
I just feel like such a radio hog when I come on your show. Like you guys just sit there like obedient students, and I just preach the whole time. You know what I mean? I hate that part.
Well, look, we're smart enough to know who the teacher is. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you're the teacher, no doubt about it. And I got to tell you, I'm having a high old time messing with my HP tuners thing and my E38 thing, trying to make it do all kinds of things that GM never intended. Mm-hmm. Like
it's easier now than it was before, right? You watched our courses and now it's easier.
Oh, it fixed everything. No, but like what I was trying to do, like they've got their wall wetting stuff, like how much fuel hangs on the walls and impact factor. And I'm trying to do something that like stock and super stock guys would know. My roll packages, I have a stock torque converter. So this thing needs to leave from a dead, if I could have the thing idle at 200, I would. So it will come up against the converter and hit it as hard as it can. And there's some things that the GM computer, unless I haven't quite figured it all out yet, it's hard. I guess when the plenum, you got the inrush air through the plenum, you've pulled air through the mass air meter, but it's all slightly delayed. So I don't want to make the thing idle at say 12-to-1 air fuel or, a low lambda number. So it seems like no matter what happens, the computer is always playing catch up in this particular area. So I've been dicking around. I mean, all the testing I've done for the most part has all been like 60 feet because that's what I want to make better, but I'm having a blast.
Yep. Well, and so the other thing you're going to run into there, and here we go on another conversation, but you had Paul Yaw on the show, and he'd probably have a lot more to say about this than me, but where you start to get stuck on that deal trying to make the engine idle lower and lower is the minimum deliverable pulse width out of the injector. Mm-hmm. What's the least amount of fuel I can make come out of this thing? So as your required fuel mass goes down with engine speed, because your air mass is, your grams per second is going way down as well, you kind of run up against a stumbling block there as well. So that makes it even more challenging.
Yeah, it's but like I said, I'm having fun because now I've figured out a little bit more, and I just told Tom now I have to go back and undo some of the other shit I did to try to take advantage.
To get back. Yeah.
I have if anybody saw my laptop, like what they say, like the 7th circle of hell, I'm in like the 31st because there's that many revisions that are all 60-foot based. Because I'm trying to get every last little, I'm treating this like a super stocker. Yep. That's what I'm trying to do.
I was just going to sound like a drag racer, 60-footing all the time.
Yeah, that's all I'm doing. Yeah. And the people that live by me near the roads, they got to think this guy's got to have a screw loose. That's all he does. He stops, he goes. He stops, he goes.
Well, you kind of do have a screw loose.
All right. Well, look.
Drive like you, right?
If anybody's looking to get an education on any of the stuff we talked about, EFI University.
The U.
Yep.
Can we call it the U?
U.
You
can, yeah. I actually have a new nickname that's kind of embarrassing, but I also kind of like it. Some of the guys that we do stuff with in the industry, we buy rings from or pistons or whatever, have jokingly started calling me #TheRealProfessor, which I think is cool, but I don't want to piss off WJ because he's, the professor. But the joke always is, well, the professor is the guy that tells everybody everything, and Warren likes to keep everything a secret, so he's kind of the opposite of a professor. So I guess the new nickname is the real professor.
That's pretty cool.
Very cool.
I like the U.
I kind of wear that as a badge of honor. So
I'm gonna get my own university hat with the U.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're gonna make university great again.
Oh, hell yeah, we are. I like it.
Here we go. That'll go down a whole nother road. Ben, as always, man, it was great talking to you.
Hell yeah.
And I appreciate the conversation on Facebook.
Time letting me talk.
Yeah. Hey, I know you hate going, but you are going next week, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to go to ATEC, and then I'm going to walk around PRI. So I've had about 50 guys private message me this week and say, are you going to be at PRI? I'd love to meet you. So that's actually kind of cool because that didn't happen a lot before we started doing the videos and doing your show a couple times. I honestly, I've had a bunch of dudes say, I listened to the podcast and I heard about you. And so, it's obviously working. So,
well, that's good for us to hear too.
Yeah.
But, nice. I'll call you when we're out there because we definitely got to sit down and have a drink or something.
I'm in, man. You know me. I'd love to sit and talk and pretend like I know stuff that I don't.
All right. Awesome.
Hey,
have
thanks.
a great night, guys. And thanks for letting me be on for the 27th time.
No, it hasn't been that many. And you're always welcome. Whenever you got something cool to talk about, you're always welcome.
All right. Well, I'll have lots of cool stuff to talk about soon, and I'll call you then.
All right. Cool.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, dude.
See ya. Later.
What a good dude.
That was good.
He's actually seriously one of the best guests.
Well, what's funny? We were talking about it today, and I said, I don't want Ben to think that we're just getting him because we can get him. I wanted to talk to him. I wanted to talk to him about all this stuff.
I know. And look at the shit you talk about.
Well, I like that, filling the inside of the block, which you'd never think about to do,
No, but
I just think to me, it's just bizarre. It shows that we have traveled into idiocracy, that people don't want a next block because they have to buy another oil pan.
Yeah.
You fucking morons.
I know, it's crazy.
Tell me again that we couldn't annihilate a normally aspirated, real class with rolls. God, this makes me want to super stock race again. But I'm not going
to
down.
Get Drag Week to make a class for it and then just dominate.
They're never going to make class for it because, here's what would happen.
But they do have a class for it.
But they have a normally aspirated class, but it's normally aspirated, probably no power in it. But then you're building a comp motor. What I would like is a rolls package. I would like a factory head, make it LS only, make it LS 6 liter. You can get them for nothing.
Yep.
Make it LS, make it a Cathedral port if it makes you idiots happy. I don't care.
I hear you.
Cathedral port head, got to be a stock casting, untouched, but you know what's wrong with this? Tech. That's what's wrong at every racetrack.
Everywhere.
Wherever you put rolls in, now there's tech. And if the tech isn't good, then it's all bets are off. It's who can cheat the most. And then that sucks because nobody's got any honor anymore.
And the tech guy is never as smart as the guys that are cheating.
No.
Never. I mean, I've never seen them.
I think I took pictures of the little lifter sleeves we had for the 875 to 842 lifters. Yeah.
God.
Yeah. I mean, but I would.
How about pumping motors with the bearing shells out?
I know people that did dumb shit like that.
Yeah, me too.
But I mean, we never did that. We had a compression roll and that was that. And we were always right there because see, just quick, stupid tech inspector story. We have our first motor checked. I'm leaning over. I'm looking at the gauge that you're not supposed to see. See, it says 8.6. I'm like, we're supposed to be 9-1. I was like,
we're putting more in this thing.
I was like, this thing is exactly 9-1. So the guy leaves. He comes back for the next motor that we seal, and you're allowed to be 9.2.
Right.
And we figured out the difference we were 9-1-1. And the guy's like, man, I got to tell you guys are the only guys that hit the compression rate. Like, yeah, well, we read a couple books. But this is so now imagine a guy who's playing by the rules. He does all the math. He looks at the compression ratio and says, that's where I got to be.
So now you're a half a point on everybody where it really matters.
Where it really matters.
Yeah, like 15.5, 16. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it does, but 8.5 to 9 is where it really matters.
I would love a real class with like factory restrictions.
That'd
because
be cool.
That's what I mean. People don't get it. Like when you put a turbo on a Tahoe. Well, I mean, I want to do that, but I want to get this thing. Look, it'll 60 foot. It'll hover right around a 202 to 207, 208. And it's pretty good. And it doesn't spin a tires, maybe a little bit here and there.
You're shot, by the way.
I know, but I can see.
You're lucky there's no class for NA.
I can see in the graphic, in the graph, that there's a place it could be a little better.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get there without fucking everything else
You're
up.
Fucking so lucky.
I'd like to get it to in the 1.9s. That's what I'd like to do for a heavy truck.
Yeah, no, it'd be cool. But you know, when we're off the air, we're going to talk about how lucky you are that they don't make a class because you wouldn't work anymore.
No, I wouldn't work.
It'd be over.
I would be living in a dumpster.
You
somewhere.
would be at some point. I mean, it would take you a while to run out, but you would run out.
Consuming. Yeah, all consuming.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I enjoyed Ben as always. That was great.
Yeah, he's really good.
And, like I said, I know we talked about it. I know we talked about torque and talked about horsepower, where it made it, torque per inch. But, I mean, from the perspective of what the Cathedral Port guys say, if you're building a true street car, I think
it's square port.
Well, I mean, a smaller head makes some torque down low, always makes something feel great. But it ain't going to win you races.
Nope.
That's all I'm going to say. So, all right, well, we'll be back again. Now, next week is PRI.
I'm PRI. You're a PRI.
I'm in a PRI.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll see you there. Thanks, everybody.